Hi everyone, this is Lizzie Jones with this week's Paper Tray Ink Make It Monday video. This week we're going to create artistic, dry brush backgrounds with a few basic supplies. Okay, so we're starting with some white satin acrylic paint and a couple of different bottles of reinkers. I have Spring Rain and a limeade ice here, as well as a couple of paintbrushes and some watercolor paper. So you're going to start by filling a paint palette with a little bit of that white paint. I find that the satin finish or a matte finish are less likely to give your finished project a strange sheen, so those are the ones I prefer. You're just going to mix the reinker with the paint. It just makes things a little bit thicker and easier to control, which is why we're using the paint here as a mixer. And you're going to blend those together really well. Keep in mind that the paint dries a little bit lighter than it might appear in the palette, so you may want to add additional reinker to make sure that the color is really exactly what you want it to be once everything's all nice and dry. And you're just going to do this with as many colors as you plan to work with. Next up, we're using the large paintbrush. This is just a household paintbrush. I think it's 2.5, maybe 3 inches. It's been used and is not as smooth or as soft as I would like to use in the house, so I'm going to repurpose it here. And once you tap in the acrylic paint, you're going to brush off as much as you can on a piece of scrap paper, and then very, very lightly with a feather light touch, you're going to brush across your watercolor panel. You can use cardstock as well, but the watercolor paper does hold up better to the moisture in the paint. Anyway, you're just going to stroke down the front of the cardstock in very quick, smooth, light strokes. I like to go one direction first, starting from the same edge, and then rotate and go the other direction. It gives you a little bit of a linen quality, or really any sort of fabric sort of texture. When you do it this way, it gives that nice crosshatch, which I think is really lovely. So you're going to just go over the cardstock or the watercolor paper as many times as you like to really get nice coverage. And keep in mind that you can always add more, but you can't take it away. So just try and be mindful of that. Here I'm using a second brush, a smaller brush. It's going to give a little bit of a different texture. And I'm using that with the limeade ice. Again, you try and remove as much of that paint from your brush as you can, while still leaving enough paint in the brush to add some color and depth to your panel. So same motion with the smaller brush, just really quick, smooth, feather light strokes over the entire face of the panel. You want to make sure you get nice even coverage. And don't push too hard because you can end up with really heavy spots, really dark spots, or blobs. That's why the feather light touch is really very important here. And you're just going to keep going over it until you're happy with the coverage. And I decided I wanted a little bit more blue here, so I just picked up that big paintbrush again and tapped it in the paint, wiped off on the scrap paper, and went at the cardstock panel from the other direction, sort of darken up those alternating edges just a little bit. You're just going to keep going over it until you're happy with it. And there we go. There is our finished panel, and I'm going to set that aside to dry for a little while. In the meantime, I have a piece of white cardstock. I've already added Xyron to the back of this, and I'm just blending some pale peony and berry sorbet inks I'm going to die cut this piece of cardstock with the Bloomin' Cute sentiment there, that thanks sentiment. I just want to give it a little bit of an ombre effect or gradient effect. So I'm making the bottom edge of it a little bit darker and making sure that the paler pink sort of blends up towards the top of that cardstock. Also, I'm going to work on the other elements of the card. I've got a little bird here from Spring Woods, a little bluebird. The first stamp there is with Blueberry Sky. The next layer of the bird is going to be in Cocoa Bean, and I'm sorry that my big head keeps getting in my videos. One of these days I will figure out how to keep my big head out of my videos, but today is not that day. Then the third layer I'm going to add in Classic Craft, and the really handy thing about this set is that the dies are open, so I can go ahead and stamp and then die cut after the stamping is complete. So it's really super convenient. Next here I have a banner from the Sketched Shapes die collection, and I'm stamping that with a sentiment from Bloomin' Cute in Cocoa Bean. Now we have the final panel. So I did decide to trim it down just a little bit. I took a 1/4 inch off of the top and a 1/4 inch off of the side, and then brushed over it with a little bit more of the blue to blend that in. Here I'm stamping with the branches from Spring Woods, also using Cocoa Bean ink. I'm going to stamp the alternate corners here to balance out the design a little bit, and I'm going to rotate that top branch so the design doesn't look too similar on both the top and the bottom. Next, I'm going to add the blooms, also from Spring Woods, and those I'm going to add in Pale Peony, and to add a little bit of depth and interest, I'm going to go ahead and sponge a little bit of Berry Sorbet directly onto the stamp before making the impression on my cardstock. So that's going to add just a little bit of interest to the flowers, make them a little bit more interesting, but it can all be done in one step, so I don't have to try and line them up again or anything like that. And you can kind of see it there on the stamp. You'll be able to see it a little bit better when it is actually stamped. See, there's a little bit of a color variation there. I did all of the flowers that very same way, and then I'm going to go back in with the leaves in Green Parakeet. And I love this background technique because you get a little bit of interest and texture, but you can still stamp on it. You can still have images on your background, directly on your card front or card panel, without having to worry about not being able to see what's going on, which I really like. So I've got a white card base here, and that watercolored and stamped panel, or brushed and stamped panel, I'm going to add to the front of the card base with some foam tape. So just cut it off the big roll there and add it in strips to the back of my watercolor paper. And I'm going to go ahead and place that right on the card front, or the card base there. Once everything's nice and straight, smush it down, make sure everything's well adhered, nice and secure. And then it's time to add the other little elements to the front of the card. The bird I'm going to add with foam tape also. So just a couple little pieces on him. And he's going to go down on that branch there in the bottom sort of third of the card. And then I'm going to peel the adhesive backing off of the thanks. The thing that I like about Xyroning before die cutting is that you don't have to deal with any of that extra adhesive residue around the outside edges of the word or the shape that you've die cut. And on things like this that are really intricate, I think that's particularly important because those glue eraser things always give me fits. So I really love the Xyron for things like this. Once it's all peeled off, I can just place it right on the card front, nice and easy. And then it's just time to press it down. Make sure everything is nice and secure. Simple. So I knew I wanted to trim down this banner, but I wanted to kind of see everything all put together before I decided how much. So I'm just going to grab a straight edge and an X-Acto knife and cut a little bit off of the end there, a little more than an inch, maybe 1.25 inches. And then that is also going to get adhered to the front with a little bit of foam tape. Love foam tape. Just peel off the adhesive backing here and lay it right down. I'm going to make sure it's nice and straight before I push down on it too much. And once I'm happy with it, just push it down, make sure it's nice and secure. So there we go. There's our card. So now it's your turn. I can't wait to see your take on the challenge. Make sure to visit Nicole Hetty's blog to see the details and link up your project. This has been Lizzie Jones for Paper Tray Inc.'s Make It Monday. Thank you so much for joining me and have a great week.